Some emergencies change everything forever. Charlotte never imagined that rushing her 4-year-old daughter Annie to the hospital would bring her face to face with the one man she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. As Annie cried in her arms from a playground accident, Charlotte had no idea that behind those ER doors waited Logan, the medical resident who once promised her forever, then disappeared when she needed him most. But what Logan discovered that night would shatter both their worlds completely. If stories about second chances and hidden truths touch your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Your support keeps these emotional journeys alive. The heavy air of the St. Mary's emergency room seemed to cling to Charlotte's skin. The smell of alcohol and coffee mixed with the sound of beeping monitors and muffled voices. She was holding Annie's hand so tightly that her knuckles were white. The little girl was no longer crying loudly, but a soft sob shook her body, and silent tears streamed down her cheeks. That subdued crying hurt more than any scream. "It hurts, Mommy," Annie whispered, her voice a distant echo in the midst of the chaos. "I know, my love," Charlotte murmured, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Annie's soft blonde curls were a constant reminder of a face Charlotte had tried to erase for 5 years. At the reception desk, the nurse seemed like a robot in a lab coat. "Name and date of birth?" "Annie Mitchell, March 15th, 2020. Possible arm fracture." The nurse typed on the keyboard. "Room 7. Dr. Carter will see you shortly." That name, Charlotte's heart leaped, and for a second, the world stopped. Carter. The blood drained from her face. No, the universe wouldn't be that cruel. She tried to calm herself, but the voice of reason felt distant. There were thousands of doctors named Carter. It was just a coincidence. But as she walked down the corridor that seemed infinitely long, each step felt heavy. The air was denser. The temperature seemed to have dropped. Something was wrong. It wasn't just a coincidence. That name was a call to the past, a warning that the life she had built with so much effort was about to fall apart. When the door opened and she saw him standing there with his back turned, examining a chart, Charlotte felt all the air leave her lungs. Those familiar broad shoulders under the white coat, the way he ran his hand through his dark hair when he was concentrating, that confident posture she once found so comforting. Logan Carter turned slowly, and when their eyes met, time stopped. "Charlotte," he breathed, the chart slipping from his fingers. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. 5 years melted away in an instant. There he was, the man who had held her through countless nights, who had promised they'd build a life together, who had disappeared when medical school called from across the country. "Dr. Carter," she managed, her voice coming out colder than she intended. "This is my daughter, Annie. She fell at daycare and hurt her arm." Logan's eyes dropped to Annie, who was peeking out from behind Charlotte's legs. For a moment, that felt like eternity. He just stared. Charlotte could see something changing in his expression. Confusion, recognition, shock. "Hello there, sweetheart," Logan said softly, crouching down to Annie's level. "Can you tell me what happened?" Annie looked up at her mother for permission before whispering, "I was trying to be like Wonder Woman on the monkey bars, but I fell." An involuntary smile crossed Logan's face. "Wonder Woman, huh? She's pretty brave. But even superheroes get hurt sometimes and need doctors to help them feel better." Charlotte watched the interaction with her heart racing. The way Logan spoke to Annie was so natural, so gentle. And she couldn't ignore how similar they looked. The same green eyes, the same smile. Even the way Annie tilted her head when she was curious. "Let's take a look at that arm, okay?" Logan said, his voice professional, but Charlotte could hear the barely contained tremor underneath. As he began examining Annie with careful precision, Charlotte noticed how his hands shook slightly every time he touched her daughter's arm. Every movement seemed loaded with discovery, with growing realization. "It doesn't look like a fracture," Logan murmured, more to himself than to them. "Probably just a bad bruise. But let's get an X-ray to be completely sure." "Will the X-ray hurt?" Annie asked, her eyes wide with concern. "Not at all, sweetheart. It's like taking a picture, but of your bones instead of your face. The nurse came to take Annie for the X-ray, and Charlotte stood to follow, but Logan's voice stopped her. "Charlotte, can we talk? After Annie's exam is finished?" She turned slowly, meeting those familiar green eyes. It had been so long since they'd been in the same room, breathing the same air. And now here they were, in the middle of a situation she'd imagined thousands of times, but never like this. "There's nothing to talk about, Logan," she said, but her voice wavered. "Please." That single word carried the weight of 5 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of a love that had been cut short. Charlotte nodded almost imperceptibly before following Annie out of the room. The X-ray confirmed no fracture, just deep tissue bruising that would heal in a few days. Annie was visibly relieved, swinging her legs from the examination table, while Charlotte helped her into a small sling. "Can I still go to daycare tomorrow, Mommy?" Annie asked hopefully. "We'll see how you feel in the morning, baby," Charlotte replied, smoothing her daughter's curls. Those curls that had the exact same texture and color as Logan's. When they returned to the examination room, Logan was sitting behind the desk, but Charlotte could see his hands were still trembling as he wrote notes in Annie's chart. He looked up when they entered, and again that intense gaze swept over Annie's face. "So, Wonder Woman," Logan said, forcing a smile. "Looks like you didn't break anything, but you'll need to wear that sling for a few days to let your arm rest." "How many days?" Annie pouted. "About 3 or 4. I bet all the other kids will think you look pretty cool." Charlotte watched the interaction, her heart breaking piece by piece. The way Logan looked at Annie was no longer just professional. There was something deeper there, a connection he was beginning to recognize but couldn't yet name. "Annie, why don't you wait in the hallway with Nurse Sarah for a few minutes?" Charlotte suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "She said she has some stickers you might like." "Can I pick 2?" Annie asked hopefully. "You can pick as many as you want, sweetheart," Logan answered before Charlotte could speak, his voice thick with an emotion he was trying to suppress. After Annie left with the nurse, the silence in the room became suffocating. Logan stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the desk. "How long?" The question came out as a hoarse whisper. Charlotte closed her eyes, gathering strength she wasn't sure she possessed. "Logan, How long, Charlotte?" he repeated, his voice firmer now. 5 years, and 4 months. Logan ran his hand over his face, and Charlotte could see the exact moment everything clicked into place. His eyes widened, and he sank back into his chair as if his legs could no longer support him. "My God," he breathed. She's mine, isn't she?" The words hung in the air between them like a confession that had been waiting 5 years to be spoken. "Yes," Charlotte whispered. "Annie is your daughter." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of their heavy breathing. Logan buried his face in his hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" When he finally looked up, Charlotte saw tears he was struggling to hold back. "Why, Charlotte?" "I had the right to know." "Rights?" The word came out more bitter than she intended. "You left, Logan. You said medical school was your priority, that you couldn't handle any distractions. Remember that word? Distractions. I never called you a distraction. Not directly, but that's what you meant when you said you needed to focus entirely on your studies. That having a serious relationship would compromise your future." Charlotte sat in the chair across from him, her own hands shaking. "I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you left for that residency program in Chicago. I tried calling you." "You tried calling me? I never got—" "3 times, Logan. 3 times." Charlotte's voice grew stronger with each word. "The first time, your roommate said you were in surgery rotations and couldn't be disturbed. The second time, you answered yourself and said you were studying for boards and would call back. You never did." Logan opened his mouth to protest, but Charlotte continued. "The third time?" She paused, the pain of that memory still fresh after all these years. "The third time you said we should take a break. that your medical career had to come first, and our relationship was becoming too complicated for someone trying to become a doctor. Charlotte, I was 8 weeks pregnant, Logan. Scared, alone, working 2 jobs to pay for prenatal care. And you were telling me that your career was more important than anything we'd had together. Charlotte wiped away a tear that refused to be contained. So I decided that if you didn't want to be part of my life, you wouldn't be part of my daughter's life either. Our daughter, Logan corrected, his voice breaking. My daughter, Charlotte said firmly. I was the one who spent 9 months pregnant and alone. Who got up every night when she cried as a baby. Who taught her to walk, to talk, to tie her shoes. Who stayed awake when she had fevers and nightmares. Who... She stopped, realizing her words were cruel, but the pain of 5 years couldn't be simply ignored. Logan stood up and walked to the small window, turning his back to her. You should have insisted, should have made me understand about the pregnancy. And you should have returned my calls, Charlotte shot back. But you didn't. And I learned to build a life without you. Annie learned to live without a father. Does she ask about me? The question caught Charlotte off guard. She sighed, some of her anger dissolving. Sometimes. I always tell her that her daddy had to go away before she was born, that sometimes adults have to make difficult choices. Logan turned to face her, and Charlotte could see the devastation in his eyes. And now? What do we do now? Charlotte looked at him, really looked. He was more mature now, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he was still the same man she'd fallen in love with in college, the same man who had left her when she needed him most. I don't know, she answered honestly. I honestly don't know, Logan. A soft knock interrupted them. Annie appeared in the doorway, holding a handful of colorful stickers and wearing a proud smile. Look, Mommy, the nice nurse gave me princess stickers and superhero ones too. Logan crouched down to her level, his voice gentle despite the emotional turmoil. Those are beautiful stickers, Annie. Which one is your favorite? Annie held up a Wonder Woman sticker. This one, because she's brave like me. You are very brave, Logan agreed, and Charlotte could hear the thickness in his voice. Braver than any superhero I know. Annie beamed at the praise. Dr. Carter, do you have kids? The question hit both adults like lightning. Logan glanced quickly at Charlotte before answering carefully. No, sweetheart. But I think having a little girl like you would be the most amazing thing in the world. You could be my friend then, Annie announced matter-of-factly. Mommy says friends are family too. Charlotte felt her eyes fill with tears. Annie's innocence made everything both simpler and infinitely more complicated. I would love to be your friend, Annie, Logan replied, his voice barely steady. Can Dr. Carter come have dinner with us, Mommy? Annie asked suddenly. I want to show him my dinosaur collection. Charlotte looked at Logan, seeing hope mixed with uncertainty in his expression. Annie, Dr. Carter is very busy taking care of people. Actually, Logan interrupted softly, I would love to see your dinosaur collection if your mommy says it's okay. Annie turned to Charlotte with pleading eyes. Please, Mommy. He seems really nice. Charlotte felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crack. Well, I suppose we could order pizza. 2 hours later, Logan found himself sitting on Charlotte's living room floor, surrounded by plastic dinosaurs, while Annie explained in great detail the difference between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and an Allosaurus. This one, Annie said, holding up a green T-Rex, is the meanest one. But this one, she picked up a smaller dinosaur, is the smartest. Mommy read me a book that said, being smart is better than being mean. Logan glanced at Charlotte, who was watching from the kitchen doorway. Your mommy is very smart. She taught you well. She teaches me lots of things. She's the best mommy in the whole world. The simple statement hit Logan harder than any accusation could have. Charlotte had raised this incredible little girl completely alone, been both mother and father, and done an extraordinary job. Annie, why don't you wash up for dinner? Charlotte called. The pizza will be here soon. As Annie ran to the bathroom, Logan stood up slowly. Charlotte, she's amazing. You've done an incredible job." "We did," Charlotte corrected quietly. "Even without knowing it, you were part of every day. She has your curiosity, your way of tilting her head when she's thinking, your exact smile." Logan looked around the small but warm apartment. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, toys were neatly organized in bins, and photos of Annie at various ages lined the mantelpiece. It was clear this was a home filled with love. "I missed everything," he said quietly. "Her first steps, first words, first day of school." "Her first word was mama," Charlotte said softly. "But her second was dada." She kept looking around like she was searching for someone. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. During dinner, Logan was amazed by Annie's intelligence and personality. She asked endless questions about being a doctor, told jokes that made him laugh despite the emotional weight of the evening, and insisted he try her special way of eating pizza, folding it into triangles. "Dr. Carter," Annie said seriously as they finished eating, "do you like my mommy?" Both adults froze. Charlotte started to deflect, but Annie continued, "Because she's been sad for a really long time. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." Charlotte's face flushed red. "Annie, that's not... I think she needs a friend too," Annie concluded with 4-year-old logic. "Maybe you could be her friend like you're mine." Logan looked at Charlotte, seeing vulnerability she was trying hard to hide. "I think your mommy is wonderful, Annie. Anyone would be lucky to be her friend." After dinner, Annie insisted Logan read her bedtime story. Charlotte watched from the doorway as he sat on the edge of Annie's small bed, reading about brave princesses and magical kingdoms with the same gentle voice she remembered from their college days. "Dr. Carter?" Annie asked sleepily as he closed the book. "Yes, sweetheart? Will you come back tomorrow?" Logan looked toward Charlotte, who was standing silently in the doorway. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. "If it's okay with your mommy, I'd love to come back." "Yay," Annie whispered, already drifting off to sleep. Back in the living room, an awkward silence settled between Charlotte and Logan. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the weight of the evening's revelations heavy in the air. "She likes you," Charlotte said quietly. "She's incredible, Charlotte. Smart, funny, kind. You've raised an amazing little girl." "It wasn't easy," Charlotte admitted. "Especially those first few years. Single motherhood isn't something you can really prepare for." Logan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Charlotte, I need you to know something. When I left for that residency, when I said those things about needing to focus on my career..." He paused, struggling with words. "I was scared. Terrified, actually. We were so young, and I was about to enter one of the most demanding programs in the country. I thought I was protecting both of us by making a clean break. By breaking my heart, I thought it would be easier. I thought we could both move on and find something better suited to our individual futures." Charlotte shook her head. "Logan, I didn't want something better suited to my future. I wanted you. I wanted us. I know that now, and I've regretted that decision every day for 5 years." The admission surprised Charlotte. "You have?" "Charlotte, there hasn't been a single day that I haven't thought about you, about what we had, about what I threw away." Logan looked at her directly. "I became a doctor, yes. I achieved everything I thought I wanted, but I've been miserable." "You seem to have moved on just fine," Charlotte said, though there was less venom in her voice now. "Have I? I'm 28 years old, and I've never had a relationship that lasted more than a few months because none of them were you. I threw myself into work because it was easier than admitting I'd made the biggest mistake of my life." Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. "Logan, you can't just come back after 5 years and expect..." "I'm not expecting anything," he interrupted gently. "I know I have no right to expect anything. But Charlotte, seeing Annie today, seeing how incredible she is, seeing how amazing you are as a mother, it made me realize what I've lost." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be part of Annie's life, however you'll let me. I know I can't make up for 5 years, but I don't want to miss any more." Charlotte studied his face, seeing sincerity mixed with desperation. "And what about us?" "I don't know," Logan admitted. "I know I hurt you. I know trust doesn't just reappear because I'm sorry. But Charlotte, if you'll let me, I'd like to try to earn back your trust, to show you that I'm not the same scared kid who ran away 5 years ago." Before Charlotte could respond, her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "I saw him going into your building. Interesting." "What's wrong?" Logan asked, noticing her expression. Charlotte showed him the message. "I don't know this number." A chill ran down Logan's spine. "Charlotte, there's something I need to tell you." "I'm engaged," Logan said quietly. The words hit Charlotte like a physical blow. "What?" "Was engaged. I mean, I am engaged, but after tonight." Logan ran his hands through his hair. "Charlotte, everything's changed. Meeting Annie, seeing you again." "Who is she?" Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. "Madison Walsh. She's a surgical resident, and her father is the chief of surgery at St. Mary's." Logan looked miserable. "We've been together for 8 months. The engagement is only 3 weeks old." Charlotte stood up abruptly. "You need to leave." "Charlotte, please." "No, Logan, you don't get to do this. You don't get to come back into my life, meet your daughter, make me start to hope again, and then tell me you're engaged to someone else. I'm going to break it off with Madison. Tonight." "Are you?" Charlotte's voice was sharp with hurt. "Or are you going to go home, think about your career, think about her father's position at the hospital, and decide that once again your professional life is more important?" The accusation stung because Logan could see how it looked from Charlotte's perspective. "That's not going to happen." "How do I know that? How do I know you won't disappear again when things get complicated?" Logan stood up, reaching for her hands, but Charlotte stepped back. "Because I've learned what really matters. Because losing you once was the biggest mistake I ever made, and I'm not going to make it twice." "You're still engaged, Logan." "Not after tonight." But even as he said the words, Charlotte could see doubt in his eyes, and she knew that until he actually ended that engagement, nothing between them could move forward. "I think you should go," she said quietly. Logan nodded, understanding. "Charlotte, I meant what I said about Annie. Regardless of what happens between us, I want to be part of her life. She's my daughter, and I love her already. I know you do, and she deserves to know her father. But Logan, if you're going to be in her life, you have to really be in her life. No disappearing when things get difficult. No choosing career over family again." "I won't disappear. I promise you that." After Logan left, Charlotte sat alone in her living room, her mind racing. For 5 years, she'd built a life around the certainty that Logan was gone forever. She'd made peace with being a single mother, with protecting Annie from the disappointment of an absent father. But now, everything was uncertain again, and that terrified her more than she wanted to admit. Across town, Madison Walsh was having a very different kind of evening. She'd been waiting for Logan to return from the hospital, planning to surprise him with his favorite dinner and discuss their upcoming engagement party. When he finally arrived at 10 p.m., 3 hours later than expected, she immediately knew something was wrong. "Where have you been?" Madison asked, trying to keep her voice light despite the anxiety building in her chest. "I had a patient that needed extra attention," Logan said, avoiding her eyes. Madison studied his face. She'd learned to read Logan's moods over their 8 months together, and right now he looked like a man whose world had been turned upside down. "What kind of patient keeps you for 3 extra hours?" "Madison, we need to talk." Those 4 words sent ice through Madison's veins. She'd heard them before, in previous relationships, always followed by words that destroyed everything she'd worked to build. "About what?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Logan sat down heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. "About us, about our engagement." Madison felt her world tilting. "Logan, what's going on? This morning everything was fine. We were planning our engagement party, talking about the wedding. Something happened today. Something that changes everything. What could possibly change everything in one day? Logan looked up at her, and Madison saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Guilt, regret, and something else. Something that looked like longing for someone who wasn't her. "I found out I have a daughter." Madison stared at him, processing the words. "You have a what?" "A daughter. She's 4 years old. Her mother brought her to the ER today and—" Logan trailed off, unable to finish. Madison's mind raced. A 4-year-old daughter meant a relationship from 5 years ago, a relationship that predated Madison entirely. "Who's the mother?" "Her name is Charlotte. We dated in college." Madison felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And you had no idea you had a child?" "None. Charlotte tried to contact me when she found out she was pregnant, but I was starting my residency and—" Logan looked ashamed. "I was so focused on my career that I didn't return her calls. She eventually stopped trying." Madison processed this information carefully. A child complicated things, but it didn't necessarily change anything between her and Logan. Plenty of people successfully blended families. But the look on Logan's face suggested this was about more than just discovering he was a father. "Logan, what aren't you telling me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Seeing Charlotte again, meeting Annie. It brought back a lot of feelings I thought I'd buried." There it was. Madison felt her worst fears crystallizing. "You still have feelings for her." "Madison, do you still have feelings for her?" Madison's voice was sharp now. Logan looked at her, and his silence was answer enough. Madison stood up abruptly, pacing across the room. "So what are you saying? That you want to break off our engagement to pursue some fantasy with your ex-girlfriend?" "It's not a fantasy. We have a daughter together. That doesn't mean you have to destroy our relationship." Logan stood up too. "Madison, I can't marry you feeling the way I do right now. It wouldn't be fair to either of us." Madison felt 8 months of careful planning, of building the perfect life, crumbling around her. She'd worked so hard to position herself as the ideal partner for Logan, professionally ambitious, socially connected, the perfect doctor's wife. "Logan, you're making a mistake. You're throwing away everything we've built for some romanticized memory of a college relationship that clearly didn't work out the first time. It didn't work out because I was an idiot who prioritized the wrong things. And what makes you think she'll take you back? She's been raising this child alone for 4 years. She's probably moved on." Logan was quiet, and Madison could see she'd hit a nerve. Maybe Charlotte wouldn't take him back. Maybe Madison could still salvage this. "Logan, I understand this is a shock. Finding out you're a father is huge. But we can work through this together. We can figure out how to include your daughter in our lives." "Madison, we're good together, Logan. We understand each other's careers. We have the same goals, the same ambitions. Don't throw that away for some idealized notion of what could have been." Logan looked at her, and for a moment, Madison thought she might have reached him. But then he shook his head. "Madison, you're an amazing woman. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservation. And right now, I can't be that person." Madison felt desperation clawing at her chest. "So that's it? You're just going to end our engagement because of one day?" "I'm ending our engagement because it's the right thing to do. For both of us." After Logan left that night, Madison sat alone in her apartment, staring at the engagement ring on her finger. 8 months of her life. 8 months of carefully building the perfect relationship, the perfect future. She wasn't going to let Charlotte Mitchell destroy everything without a fight. Madison Walsh was not someone who accepted defeat easily. As the daughter of Dr. Richard Walsh, chief of surgery at St. Mary's Hospital, she'd grown up understanding that success required strategic thinking and decisive action. The next morning, she began her investigation into Charlotte Mitchell. It didn't take long to find the basics. Charlotte was a freelance graphic designer, had been raising Annie alone since birth, lived in a modest apartment downtown. On the surface, she seemed unremarkable, exactly the kind of woman Madison couldn't understand Logan throwing away his future for. But Madison knew there had to be more. People didn't just disappear from someone's life for 5 years without reason. There had to be something about Charlotte that would prove to Logan that she wasn't worth sacrificing his career for. Madison made some calls, used some of her father's connections to dig deeper into Charlotte's background. What she found was a woman who'd struggled financially in the early years of single motherhood, who'd moved apartments several times, who'd worked multiple part-time jobs while trying to establish her freelance business. It wasn't much, but Madison knew how to make something out of very little. That afternoon, she happened to be in the ER when Logan was finishing his shift. She watched from a distance as he seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly, looking toward the exit every few minutes. "Logan," she called, approaching him with a concerned expression. He looked up, clearly uncomfortable. "Madison, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see how you were doing. I know yesterday was difficult." Logan glanced around, making sure they weren't being overheard. "Madison, we talked about this. I meant what I said. I know you did. But Logan, I'm worried about you. You're making life-changing decisions based on one emotional day. It's not just one day, isn't it? You saw your ex-girlfriend, and suddenly you're ready to throw away everything we've built?" Madison moved closer, lowering her voice. "Logan, I care about you too much to let you make a mistake you'll regret." "What are you talking about?" Madison hesitated, as if reluctant to share what she'd discovered. "I did some research into Charlotte Mitchell. Logan, there are some things about her background that concern me." Logan's expression hardened. "What kind of research?" "Just basic public records. But Logan, her financial history is concerning. She's had multiple address changes, inconsistent employment, and..." Madison paused dramatically. "There have been some questions about her parenting." "What kind of questions?" Madison pulled out a folder she'd prepared, containing carefully manipulated information, not technically lies, but creative interpretations of the truth. "Look, I know you want to believe the best of her, but a child getting injured at daycare, a mother who works irregular hours, multiple living situations." Logan looked through the papers, his expression growing troubled. Madison had been very careful with her fabrications. Nothing that could be easily disproven, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. "Madison, what are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just concerned that you might be seeing this situation through rose-colored glasses. You want so badly to believe in this family fantasy that you're not looking at the reality of the situation." Logan was quiet, studying the documents. Madison could see him wavering, could see his medical mind trying to analyze the situation objectively. "Logan, I love you. I want what's best for you, and I want what's best for your daughter. But rushing into a situation without fully understanding it could hurt everyone involved." "I need to think about this," Logan said quietly. Madison nodded sympathetically. "Of course you do. Just be careful, Logan. Sometimes the people we want to trust the most are the ones who end up hurting us." After Logan left, Madison felt a mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. She'd planted the seeds of doubt, but she wasn't sure they'd taken root deeply enough. Logan's feelings for Charlotte seemed stronger than she'd anticipated. She needed a more definitive way to remove Charlotte from the equation. That evening, Madison made a phone call to a contact in Child Protective Services. 3 days had passed since Logan's visit, and Charlotte was trying to establish some sense of normalcy. Annie had recovered from her injury and was back to her usual energetic self, but she asked about Dr. Carter constantly. "When is my doctor friend coming back, Mommy?" "I don't know, sweetie. He's very busy at the hospital. But he said he wanted to see my dinosaurs again." Charlotte's heart ached every time Annie brought up Logan. She'd allowed herself to hope, just for a moment, that maybe they could find a way to make things work. But his engagement changed everything. She was preparing lunch when the doorbell rang. Annie ran toward the door excitedly. "Maybe it's Dr. Carter!" But when Charlotte looked through the peephole, her blood ran cold. 2 people in professional attire stood outside, carrying clipboards and official-looking folders. "Annie, go to your room and play, please." "But who is it, Mommy?" "Just go to your room, sweetheart." I'll call you when lunch is ready." With trembling hands, Charlotte opened the door. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Sarah Chen from Child Protective Services, and this is my colleague, Robert Martinez. We need to ask you some questions regarding your daughter, Annie." Charlotte felt the world tilting around her. "What kind of questions?" "May we come in? We've received a report regarding potential neglect and we need to investigate." Charlotte had no choice but to let them in. For the next hour, they questioned her about Annie's injury, about her work schedule, about her living situation. They asked about Logan, about how often he visited, about the nature of their relationship. "The report indicates that you may be exposing your daughter to unstable relationships and potentially dangerous individuals," Ms. Chen explained. "There are also concerns about your ability to provide consistent supervision." "That's ridiculous," Charlotte said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Annie has never been neglected. She fell at daycare. Children fall all the time." "We'll need to verify that with the daycare center," Mr. Martinez said, making notes. "We'll also need to interview Dr. Carter about his interactions with your daughter." After they left, Charlotte sat on her living room floor and cried. Annie emerged from her bedroom, confused and scared. "Mommy, why were those people here? Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults just need to ask questions to make sure children are safe." But as Charlotte held her daughter, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was deliberately trying to destroy their lives. And she had a terrible suspicion about who that someone might be. Logan received the call from Child Protective Services that same afternoon. They wanted to interview him about his relationship with Charlotte Mitchell and her daughter, Annie. "Dr. Carter, we understand you've recently begun spending time with Ms. Mitchell and her child. Can you tell us about the nature of that relationship?" Logan felt sick. "Annie is my daughter. I only recently discovered her existence. And Ms. Mitchell's fitness as a parent, do you have any concerns?" "Absolutely none," Logan said firmly. "Charlotte is an exceptional mother. Anyone who knows her could see that." But as he hung up the phone, Logan's mind raced. Someone had made a report against Charlotte, and the timing was too suspicious to be coincidental. His medical training kicked in, analyzing the situation like a complex diagnosis. Who knew about his relationship with Charlotte? Who would benefit from having Charlotte investigated by Child Protective Services? The answer hit him like a physical blow. Madison. Logan immediately drove to Charlotte's apartment. When she answered the door, her eyes were red from crying and she looked devastated. "Logan, I can't deal with this right now. Charlotte, listen to me. I think I know who made the report." She stared at him, confusion mixing with hurt. "What do you mean? Can I come in? We need to talk." Reluctantly, Charlotte let him inside. Annie was napping, exhausted from the stress of the morning's events. "Madison," Logan said simply. "Your fiancé?" "Ex-fiancé. I broke it off with her 2 nights ago." Logan sat down across from Charlotte. "She knew I was here the other night. Someone sent you a text, remember? And today, Child Protective Services called me asking about your fitness as a parent." Charlotte's face went pale. "You think she's trying to have Annie taken away from me?" "I think she's trying to eliminate what she sees as competition for my attention." Charlotte stood up abruptly, anger replacing fear. "Your attention? Logan, this isn't some game. Someone is trying to destroy my family because of your relationship drama. You're right, and I'm going to fix this." "How?" Logan pulled out his phone. "By getting proof." Logan's plan was simple, but risky. He called Madison, pretending he was having doubts about ending their engagement. "Madison, I've been thinking about what you said, about Charlotte's background, about me making decisions too quickly." Madison's voice brightened immediately. "Logan, I'm so glad you called. I've been so worried about you. Can we meet tonight? I think we need to talk." They met at a quiet restaurant downtown. Logan had his phone set to record, legally questionable, but he was desperate. "Madison, you were right about me making hasty decisions," Logan began, hating every word. "This whole situation with Charlotte and Annie, it's more complicated than I thought." Madison leaned forward, encouraged. "What do you mean?" Well, Child Protective Services called me today. They're investigating Charlotte for potential neglect. Madison's expression flickered, just for a moment, but Logan caught it. Satisfaction. Barely contained triumph. "Oh no, that's terrible," Madison said, but her tone didn't match her words. "What kind of neglect?" "I don't know all the details, but it makes me wonder. Maybe you were right about her not being as stable as I thought." Madison reached across the table, taking his hand. "Logan, I know this is hard to hear, but sometimes people aren't who we think they are, especially people from our past." "You're probably right," Logan said, fighting nausea. "I mean, what kind of mother lets her child get injured at daycare?" "Exactly," Madison said, warming to the topic, "and exposing a 4-year-old to strangers, letting men she barely knows back into her life. It shows poor judgment at best." Logan's phone was recording every word. "I just feel so guilty about Annie. She's my daughter, but if Charlotte really is neglectful..." "Logan, you can't save everyone, and you can't let guilt about the past destroy your future." Madison squeezed his hand. "We could fight for custody of Annie together. Give her the stable, 2-parent home she deserves." The audacity of the suggestion nearly broke Logan's composure. Madison was talking about stealing his daughter from the woman who'd raised her with love and dedication. "You'd do that? Help me get custody?" "Of course. Children belong with parents who can provide for them properly. And Logan, think about what kind of life we could give Annie. Private schools, the best medical care, opportunities Charlotte could never provide." Logan had heard enough. He had Madison on recording suggesting they fight for custody based on fabricated neglect allegations, but he needed her to admit to making the report. "Madison, can I ask you something? How did Child Protective Services know to investigate Charlotte? I mean, the timing seems coincidental." Madison hesitated, and Logan could see her calculating. "Sometimes concerned citizens report situations that seem problematic." "Concerned citizens?" "Logan, when I saw you going into her building the other night, when I realized what was happening, I was worried about that little girl's welfare." "So, you made the report." The words hung between them. Madison's face went pale as she realized what she'd just admitted. "I was protecting Annie, and protecting you from making a mistake that would ruin your career." Logan felt sick. "You fabricated a report to Child Protective Services to have my daughter taken away from her mother." "I didn't fabricate anything. I reported legitimate concerns." "Based on what? You don't know Charlotte. You've never met Annie." Madison's mask was finally slipping. "I know enough. I know she's a single mother with financial problems who's using her child to manipulate you." Logan stood up abruptly. "This conversation is over." "Logan, wait." "No, Madison. What you've done is not only morally reprehensible, it's probably illegal. You've used your position and your father's influence to attack an innocent family." Madison's face hardened. "You're making a mistake, Logan. When this all falls apart, when Charlotte shows her true colors, don't come crying to me." "I won't have to," Logan said quietly, "because I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are." The next morning, Logan walked into Child Protective Services with a complete file of evidence against Madison Walsh. The recording of their conversation, documentation of her access to hospital resources, and a timeline showing the correlation between their breakup and the report against Charlotte. "Ms. Chen," Logan said to the social worker who had interviewed Charlotte, "I have information relevant to the Mitchell case that I think you need to see." An hour later, Ms. Chen was visibly disturbed. "Dr. Carter, if what you're telling me is true, this represents a serious abuse of our system. It's true. I have recordings, documentation, everything you need to verify that the report against Charlotte Mitchell was fabricated by someone with a personal vendetta. We'll need to investigate this thoroughly. In the meantime, the case against Ms. Mitchell is suspended." Logan felt a wave of relief. "What happens to Madison Walsh?" "If we can verify your evidence, she could face charges for filing a false report and for attempting to manipulate a government agency." That afternoon, Logan drove to Charlotte's apartment with news that would change everything. When Charlotte opened the door, she looked exhausted and defeated. "Logan, if you're here to tell me more bad news..." "The case is suspended," he said immediately. "Child Protective Services knows the report was fabricated." Charlotte stared at him, not quite believing. "What?" "I got Madison to confess. I have recordings of her admitting she made the report to eliminate you as competition." Charlotte sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "She really did this? She really tried to have Annie taken away from me?" "Yes, and she's going to face consequences for it." "Why would she do something so cruel?" Logan sat down across from her. "Because she saw you as a threat to the life she'd planned for us. When I broke off our engagement, she decided to remove you permanently." Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. "Logan, I can't live like this. I can't have Annie constantly at risk because of the drama in your life." The words hit Logan like a punch. "Charlotte, Madison is out of the picture now. She'll probably face criminal charges. And what about the next Madison? What about the next person who decides they don't like your relationship with your ex and your daughter?" Logan leaned forward. "There won't be a next Madison." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Because this experience taught me what really matters." Charlotte looked at him, seeing something different in his expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean I quit my job at St. Mary's." Charlotte's eyes widened. "You did what?" "I quit. I'm taking a position at the community clinic downtown. Less prestige, less money, but more time with the people I love." "Logan, you can't throw away your career." "I'm not throwing it away. I'm choosing what matters." Logan reached for her hands. "Charlotte, 5 years ago I chose my career over love. I'm not making that mistake again." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I never stopped loving you, and I love Annie. I want to be the father she deserves and the partner you deserve." Charlotte pulled her hands away. "Logan, you can't just decide that everything is fine now that Madison is gone. We have 5 years of hurt between us. I have 5 years of learning to live without you. I know. And I'm not asking you to forget those 5 years or pretend they didn't happen. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I've changed." Before Charlotte could respond, Annie appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes after her nap. "Dr. Carter!" she exclaimed, running to him. Logan caught her in a hug, lifting her off the ground. "Hey there, princess. How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here. Mommy was sad all day." Logan looked at Charlotte over Annie's head. "Maybe we can make Mommy feel better. What do you think?" "How?" "Well, I was thinking maybe we could all have dinner together, and maybe I could read you another bedtime story." Annie's face lit up. "Really? And can you stay for breakfast too?" Logan looked at Charlotte questioningly. She sighed, seeing the hope in her daughter's eyes. "We'll see, baby. One step at a time." But for the first time in 5 years, Charlotte allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Over the following weeks, Logan proved his commitment through actions rather than words. He showed up consistently, helped with Annie's daily routines, and slowly earned back Charlotte's trust. He was there when Annie had a nightmare about the mean lady who asked scary questions. He helped with grocery shopping, attended a parent-teacher conference at Annie's preschool, and learned to braid Annie's hair for special occasions. "Daddy Logan," Annie said one evening as he tucked her into bed. The name had evolved naturally, and Logan's heart swelled every time he heard it. "Yes, princess? Are you going to stay this time?" The question, asked with 4-year-old directness, hit Logan harder than any accusation from Charlotte ever could. "Yes, Annie. I'm going to stay. I promise." "Good. Mommy smiles more when you're here." It was true. Charlotte was slowly letting down her guard, allowing herself to hope again. But Logan could see that she was still protecting her heart, still waiting for him to disappoint her again. One evening, after Annie was asleep, Charlotte finally voiced her deepest fear. "Logan, what happens when this gets difficult? when we fight about parenting decisions or money gets tight or your career demands more of your time. Logan took her hands in his. Then we work through it together, like families do. And you won't run away again? Charlotte, I can't promise we won't have problems. Every couple has problems. But I can promise you that I'll never run away again. I'll fight for us, for Annie, for our family. Charlotte studied his face, seeing the maturity that hadn't been there 5 years ago. I'm scared, Logan. I'm scared too. But I'm more scared of losing you again than I am of facing whatever problems come our way. That night, Charlotte made a decision. When Logan moved to kiss her goodnight on the cheek, as he had every night for weeks, she turned her face so their lips met instead. It was their first kiss in over 5 years, and it felt like coming home. 6 months later, Logan had fully integrated into Charlotte and Annie's daily life. He'd moved into a larger apartment nearby to be closer to them, had established himself at the community clinic, and had won over even Charlotte's skeptical mother during Sunday family dinners. Madison Walsh had been charged with filing a false report and abuse of government resources. Her medical license was under review, and her father had been forced to step down from his position at St. Mary's pending an ethics investigation. But more importantly, Annie was thriving with her father in her life. She was more confident, happier, and loved having both parents at her preschool events. On a quiet Saturday morning, while Charlotte was making pancakes and Annie was playing with her dolls, Logan made his decision. Annie, he called quietly, can you come help Daddy with something? Annie ran over, curious. Logan knelt down to her level and pulled out a small velvet box. Annie, you know how much I love you and Mommy, right? Annie nodded solemnly. Well, I want to ask Mommy to marry me, so we can all be a real family. But I need your help. Annie's eyes went wide with excitement. You want to marry Mommy? Very much, but only if it's okay with you. Yes, 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 Annie whispered loudly. I want us to be a family forever. Logan opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant engagement ring. Can you help me ask her? Together they approached Charlotte, who was humming while flipping pancakes, completely unaware of what was happening behind her. Mommy, Annie said in her most serious voice, Daddy Logan has something to ask you. Charlotte turned around, and her hands flew to her mouth when she saw Logan on one knee, with Annie standing beside him holding the ring box. Charlotte Mitchell, Logan said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me the greatest gift any man could receive, a beautiful daughter and the chance to be the father I should have been from the beginning. Annie bounced on her toes, barely able to contain her excitement. But more than that, you gave me a second chance at love, at family, at being the man I was meant to be. Logan's eyes filled with tears. I promise I'll never leave again. I promise I'll put our family first, always. I promise I'll love you both for the rest of my life. Will you marry us, Mommy? Annie burst out, unable to wait any longer. Charlotte was crying now, looking between Logan and Annie, her daughter who looked so much like her father, and the man who had finally become the person she'd always known he could be. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Logan stood up and slipped the ring onto her finger, while Annie cheered and jumped up and down. Are we a real family now? Annie asked. We've always been a real family, Princess, Logan said, pulling both Charlotte and Annie into his arms. Now we're just making it official. 3 months later, Charlotte walked down the aisle of the small chapel where she and Logan had first met during a college volunteer event. She wore a simple white dress, and Annie walked beside her as her maid of honor, carrying a basket of flower petals and wearing a dress that matched her mother's. The guest list was small, close family and friends who had supported them through their journey. Charlotte's mother wept happy tears, and Logan's parents, who had flown in from Oregon, were overjoyed to finally meet their granddaughter. When Charlotte reached the altar, Logan took her hands and whispered, "You're beautiful." Annie stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands and beaming at the assembled guests. "Do you, Logan Carter, take Charlotte to be your wife? To love and cherish her through all of life's joys and challenges? I do, Logan said, looking directly into Charlotte's eyes. Forever. Do you, Charlotte Mitchell, take Logan to be your husband, to love and cherish him through all of life's joys and challenges? I do, Charlotte replied, feeling more certain than she ever had about anything. And Annie, the minister said with a smile, do you promise to be the best daughter to both your parents? I do, Annie announced loudly, making everyone laugh. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. And Annie, you are officially part of the most loving family I've ever had the privilege to unite. Logan, you may kiss your bride. As Logan and Charlotte kissed, Annie cheered and threw flower petals in the air. The small congregation erupted in applause, and Charlotte felt a happiness she'd never thought possible. 2 years later, Charlotte sat in the garden of their new house, watching Logan push Annie on the swing set he'd built in their backyard. Annie was now 6 years old, in first grade, and constantly chattering about her friends at school and how proud she was that her daddy was a doctor who helped people. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" Annie called out, her laughter filling the air. "Any higher and you'll fly to the moon," Logan called back, but he pushed a little higher anyway. Charlotte smiled, one hand resting on her growing belly. At 5 months pregnant, she was finally starting to show, and Annie was beside herself with excitement about becoming a big sister. "Baby James is going to love the swing too," Annie had announced when they told her about the pregnancy, having somehow decided that the baby was definitely going to be a boy named James. Logan caught Charlotte's eye and walked over, sitting beside her on the porch steps while Annie continued swinging. "Happy?" he asked, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Completely," Charlotte said, leaning into him. "Sometimes I can't believe this is real." "It's real," Logan said, kissing the top of her head. "We're real. Our family is real." Annie jumped off the swing and ran over to them, settling on Logan's lap and putting her small hand on Charlotte's belly. "When is baby James coming, Mommy?" "James?" Logan laughed. "What if the baby is a girl?" Annie considered this seriously. "Then her name will be Jamie, but I think it's a boy." "Why do you think that?" Charlotte asked. "Because then he can look like Daddy just like me. Then you'll have 2 kids who look like Daddy and you won't ever forget what he looks like." Logan and Charlotte exchanged a look over Annie's head. Even at 6, Annie still sometimes worried about people leaving, though Logan had proven his constancy every single day for over 2 years. "Annie," Logan said gently, "even if you and the baby looked exactly like Mommy, I would never leave. Do you know why?" Annie shook her head. "Because leaving would mean being without the people I love most in the world, and that would make me the saddest person ever." Annie thought about this and nodded solemnly. "That would be really sad." "Really sad," Logan agreed. "So I'm never leaving. Not ever. Promise?" "Promise." That evening, after Annie was asleep and they were cleaning up the dinner dishes together, Charlotte reflected on their journey. "Logan, do you ever regret how everything happened? The years we lost?" Logan considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain I caused you. I regret missing Annie's early years. But regret the journey that brought us here? No." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his soapy ones. "Charlotte, those 5 years apart made me the man you deserved, made me understand what really matters, made me appreciate what we have in a way I never could have at 23. Charlotte smiled. "So you think everything happened the way it was supposed to?" "I think we found our way back to each other when we were both ready to build something lasting. And now," he placed his hands on her belly, "now we get to build our future together." As they finished cleaning up and prepared for bed, Charlotte marveled at the simple domesticity of it all. The family calendar on the refrigerator with Annie's school events and Logan's work schedule. The photos covering every surface, their wedding, Annie's first day of first grade, family vacations, quiet moments at home. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the steady, reliable love of a family committed to each other through everything life could bring. And so Charlotte learned that some stories don't have endings. They have new beginnings. That true love isn't the kind that never faces obstacles, but the kind that chooses to rebuild stronger after every storm. That family isn't just about blood or legal documents, but about the people who choose to stay when everything else falls apart. Because in the end, it's not our mistakes that define us. It's how we choose to learn from them and love despite them. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, life gives us a second chance to get it right. If this story of second chances and family touched your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Your support is what allows us to keep bringing you these emotional journeys about the power of love, forgiveness, and never giving up on the people who matter most. Because every ending is really just a new beginning waiting to unfold.